Right now, we have Congressman Michael McCaul on the phone. He is the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, and he was talking to us right about this time yesterday, or somewhere around this time, when we did not have a suspect in custody. So, Congressman, just your reaction to the latest news that we have learned overnight.
Well, for me, as a Austin resident, we can finally say this nightmare is over, ending with the suspect blowing himself up at the end of the day. And so, I think for the victims and their families, I'm sure there's a relief that finally has been brought to justice, and there won't be any court proceedings or anything. It's done and it's over, and I think that's the good news.
What else can you tell us about Mark Anthony Condit?
Well, we don't know a whole lot about his profile other than he's a 24-year-old white male, obviously disturbed. His residence is being searched as we speak to get more information about what motivation he had to do this. They'll be looking at his, obviously, anything in his house, his electronic devices. I think could be very telling. His social media, I think, would be very instructive as to what his motivation was for doing this. They'll be talking to his parents, which I think they're doing right now, to find out more about this individual. I have to say, from a federal prosecutor standpoint, this was probably a textbook case of how it's supposed to work for federal, state, and local law enforcement working together to bring a suspect to justice. It was really great police work how they found him, and I think his fatal mistake was when he walked into the FedEx office to mail the package, because from there we could get the surveillance video of him, get his vehicle, his license plate number, identify the individual, go to the Home Depot where he bought the stuff, and then eventually with a cell phone be able to locate him, which they did, this morning, where we had this chase by law enforcement that ultimately ended in him blowing himself up.
Did he act alone?
That's unclear. He is the bomber. That's for sure. But whether he had assistance, I think that's we don't know the 100% certainty answer to that one. I think we'll find out more as they search his house if he had an accomplice to this.
Before we let you go, we have a few more questions. Had assistance. NBC News is reporting that he was able to order what they call exotic batteries to make his explosives through the mail from Asia. Is that an affirmative yes?
I know he had a battery pack. I don't know if it was an exotic battery from Asia. I know that he bought a lot of his bomb-making equipment from the Home Depot that was in Pflugerville, close to his home. But he did have a battery pack, and he had nails, and that's, unfortunately, and I look at this most of the time through the jihadist lens and ISIS, and they have a magazine that teaches you how to make a bomb in the kitchen of your mom, it says, and so the Anarchist Cookbook has been out there for years. There's so much material on the internet how to make these explosive devices, and they're not that difficult to do, and it's unfortunate that it's all out there, but I assume that's how he learned how to make it.
Congressman, you had mentioned, that some of the materials have been purchased at a Home Depot store, and you said that, he really made his mistake, or I guess in our case, fortunate move, when he went into that FedEx store. Would that Home Depot information, you mentioned also his cell phone signal, would any of that really have been possible to find as quickly as they did if he had not gone into that FedEx store?
I think everything flowed from his going into the FedEx store, because from there we were able to ascertain who the individual was. And so, I think that was, again, his fatal mistake, and thank God he did that, because before that time, he would just place the bomb packages on front doorsteps, and he was very good at getting around surveillance cameras when he did that. So he knew what he was doing. And so we couldn't, we had video surveillance footage, but it was very difficult to detect him. I think when you walked into the FedEx store, we had a lot more certainty as to who he was.
So there was video surveillance of this person they thought might be him before he'd gone into that FedEx store.
Well, surveillance video of people walking away from the scene. It was really unclear at the time, but I think, again, when we were able to figure out, okay, this is a guy that sent the package that went to Shirts that was going to come back to Austin, that really nailed it down for law enforcement. So, and then from there, if you get the vehicle and the tag numbers, you got probable cause, and you got the name of the person, you got enough probable cause to get the phone number, and they also did a Google account search from there as well. So that's why I just think this was, it was kind of lucky, but that's how most of these cases they're not always smart and they make a mistake, and his mistake was walking into that FedEx location, but thank God he did, because we wouldn't have caught him.
But Congressman, that big mistake, is it unusual for somebody who was using such sophisticated methods like a tripwire for that explosion that happened in Southwest Austin? As a former prosecutor yourself, sometimes you have to kind of argue the case against yourself. So how do you figure out how he was able to think that it was okay to enter a FedEx facility where cameras are around you and there's a tracking device that could find you? Yeah, and
it's actually classic. I mean, they're not always smart, and they make mistakes, and they can be reckless. And sometimes, I find in a weird psychological way, they want to be caught, and they're just sort of daring it. And then there's also what they call, suicide by cop, where maybe he knew that this was going to end bad for him, and he got reckless, at the end, and that was his mistake. But it was our I think for the community in Austin now, we can all have a sigh of relief that this nightmare, this chapter, is finally over.
I think that is sort of the palpable feeling from a lot of people in this city. Now, the video that we have seen of him walking into that FedEx location, he appears to be carrying 2 packages. Do you know, did both of those packages end up at that Shirts facility, and then one of those was the package that ended up at the FedEx facility here in Austin?
Yeah, there were 2 packages, and what I can tell you is one of them was detonated at Shirts, and another package. There was also one that was found at Austin Bergstrom that I still don't know. That was suspicious. I'm not sure about that one. The 2 did go through Shirts, and one had not detonated, and that we were also looking at that one. That was actually going to be very good evidence for law enforcement in terms of, since it had not exploded, they were obviously looking at that for any DNA or fingerprint materials on that unexploded package.
As a former prosecutor, when, a lot of the theories that have been talked about, he may not have had military training, but he had to have some kind of experience in this. Were you surprised when you saw his age? Yeah,
to be honest, I thought it would be an older person, but at the end of the day, he's probably a loner. We'll probably find out he's a loner individual. Didn't have a lot of friends. Very disturbed, seeking attention. What led him down to this path, I don't know at this point in time. But I'm sure we'll find out more when we go through all of his social media. Of course, the average age of the jihadist is a male in his 20s, typically, when you look at ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So
Congressman,
they
what
sort
are
of
you...
feel like they're immortal at that age.
Congressman, what are you hearing as far as, did he have any more packages at the ready to do this again?
Well, that's the unanswered question again that I would urge everybody in Austin a little bit of caution as well, as we don't know how many other packages could be out there. I'm hopeful that we find whatever was left in his house, his residence.
Right.
But there could be other packages out there, so we do urge caution about that. But I know as they're I've been talking to these guys this morning. I used to work with a lot of these the team, and so I'm real proud of what they did. But they, I think in their house, his house, they're going to find a lot of different bomb-making materials. And again, I think that social media is going to be really important.
It's going to be huge. You talked a little bit about some of those materials that he was able to use, buy at a Home Depot, nails, and you said there was some kind of a battery device. From your investigation that you can tell us so far, was he using some control to detonate these devices, or was it some kind of timer that people would pick it up and it explode? I'm still trying to figure out, and I'm sure you are too, how he was able to deliver these devices without it exploding on himself.
Yeah, I would, I don't know the answer to that, but, my guess is it would have either when you open it up, it would automatically explode, or it had a timer on it. I don't, but I don't know the answer to that. And as, all these devices are being analyzed in Maryland right now by ATF.
Right.
As I speak, they've all been sent up to there. And that's how we were able to determine it was the same suspect, because they were all these devices were pretty much the same. And so when you heard us talk earlier about them being similar, they were similar in terms of the nails and the battery packs and all that. They're almost identical.
You shared some personal news with us yesterday, how you knew some of the victims in these attacks over at the Donsong Drive explosion. Have you been able to talk to them and let them know that this has happened now?
Well, these are really kind of friends of friends, to be honest with you, in the neighborhood. Because, I live in the west area of Austin. Right. And, I have friends who knew the two individuals on the bicycles who hit the tripwire. And it's just kind of close to home when that happens. And I'm used to talking about explosions and shootings that happen in other cities, and you just never think it's going to happen in your hometown. But this shows you that you're never completely safe. This is, again, I think it's accurate to say that with 500 federal agents, that this is the largest bombing of Boston bombings.
And based on your experience as a prosecutor, where do you think this investigation goes next? We know that they're going to obviously search the house and look for those bomb-making materials, but is there a key bit of information that you, as someone who has put together these cases, are still looking for?
Well, I think, again, you want to know motivation, and that social media, I think, will play that out. You want to know if there are any other suspects out there. And you want to know if there are any other bomb packages out there. Those are the three things that I'd be looking for. If there are other bombs out there to protect the public. Are there any other, accomplices to this to protect the public and bring them to justice? And then finally, I think everybody in the community wants to know what would drive somebody to do something like this.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that normally you kind of know, you have some sense of why. They will give you a manifesto, or they will, if it's ISIS, they're going to claim credit for it. You know their motivation. But this was, the Unabomber case is very odd. We didn't know his motivation until later. And I think the snipers on the East Coast, we weren't sure about their motivation until the end, as well. And sometimes these things make no sense. I mean, how can you make sense out of bombing people randomly? That really makes no sense to people of sound mind like you and I.
And based on what you've been briefed on with the investigation, do these victims appear to be random?
It appears to be, but again, we won't know that till we look through all of his electronic devices, his computer, laptops, phone, all of his social media. I think will give us a better insight as to whether they were specifically targeted or just random. Certainly a tripwire in a green space near a trail looks pretty random to me. You're not targeting a certain individual, maybe a certain area of town. to put signs up, children at play. You know, I just it's very sinister, and I don't see a thread between all the victims. They're not really interrelated, but that's something that I know the Austin Police Department will get to the bottom of.
You mentioned the children at play sign. I'm sorry. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think he. I may be wrong about this, but I think he purchased a children at play sign and put it near the tripwire.
The tripwire. And that is something that you have heard in terms of the briefings of the investigation. Wow.
Which is, shows you how sick this individual is or was.
Yeah, that is a strange detail. Congressman Michael McCaul, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and your expertise in these matters as well.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I just say again, I'm for people in Austin. We're just so relieved that this nightmare is finally over.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that way, Congressman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.